Let's focus on some of the important topics and the highlights for down to earth this time. The first important topic is stubble burning. Now, stubble burning has been one of the major concerns in most of the regions of Punjab and Haryana. One of the major reasons attributed is production of paddy crops. Now, paddy is not a crop which is supposed to be grown in the regions of Punjab and Haryana. It's a crop that requires lot of water. However, paddy has been, since the Green Revolution, being one of the major crops in the regions of Punjab and Haryana. What has happened is, with this paddy burning, we have with this stubble burning or the burning of the straws left from the paddy, we have seen a lot of atmospheric pollution in the regions of Delhi NCR. The Lancet report has also talked about the harmful impacts on the health with such a lot increase in the pollution level. So what are the probable solutions? Three probable solutions have been laid down, and these three of them have been very interesting. The first is, the value for this straw should be given, and therefore this straw could be used as a compressed biogas. Now, the first such project is supposed to start in 2021, where the straw, rather than burning this in the open atmosphere, it would be used for compressed biogas production. So that is one of the alternatives. It would reduce the pollution as well as utilize the straw. The second is, we might use the machines to plow the straws onto the ground itself. However, this is a very expensive technology, and therefore it is not that widely used by small and marginal farmers. The next is asking the farmers to gradually wean away from the paddy crops and move towards the crop which could give them higher returns, and diversifying their production. So that is the third suggestion. So these three have been, as of now, some of the most important and popular solutions for the issue of stubble burning. Every time as you have the harvest season that starts, the same problem emerges, and therefore an immediate solution is something that is required. The next important topic that has been discussed is the rainy days in the 2020 or 2020. We have seen in 2019 and 2020 are the two consecutive years where the monsoon rainfall has been more than the LPA, that is the long period average, for 1961 to 2010, and this has been at a value of 880 millimeters. Now, this has been a record highest jump in the period of last 50 years. So therefore, we need to understand how this process has been changing. Over the last 44 years, we have seen nearly 27% surplus rainfall, and this year, August, was the year where you had the highest record rainfall in the last 30 years, and this was nearly 109% of the long period average, which is the average of 1961 to 2010. Also, we have seen four of the episodes so far. So one was in 2019, where it was 15% above normal. 2020, this year, where we had 27% above normal rainfall. In 1976, we had 28% above normal rainfall, and in 1926, we had 33% above normal rainfall. So over the years, we need to understand that these low pressure systems have increased, and because of the low pressure system being increased, the probability of rainy months and the rainy years have increased. Also, the most affected regions have been the regions in the north of Bay of Bengal and the movement towards the western parts of Gujarat and Rajasthan. The next important factors associated with this is La Nina this year, and the details of La Nina we have covered in the previous Down to Earth, as well as in one of the separate lectures where we have explained La Nina and El Nino as one of the major phenomena along with ENSO. The next important reason attributed to it is the monsoonal intra-seasonal oscillations that are seen, where you have active break periods of the monsoon. The next important development that we need to understand is tea production. Now, tea is one of the major crops in the regions of Darjeeling and Assam. However, recently we have seen lot of tea production in the regions of Uttarakhand. One of the major reasons for this is in Uttarakhand we have over the years witnessed lots and lots of monkeys and wild boars which have been destroying the crop. However, tea is one of the crop that is being not affected by these animals, and therefore tea cultivation could be a productive means. So the regions like Kasoni, Dehradun are the regions where you have a lot of tea production, mainly the green tea production and the native variety of Nanda Devi tea production which has been seen. The important idea is the local shrubs that are growing in the regions of Uttarakhand had been one of the popular herbs and the shrubs for the British period, and since then you had lots and lots of tea production in this region. However, since last 150 years or a period of more than 100 years, this production was totally stopped. It has been restored recently with Uttarakhand government giving initiatives for reintroducing tea since 1987, and that is the time we have lot of tea plantation coming up with hectares and hectares of land being now cultivated into tea production or tea plantations. Also, a lot of migration of skilled labor has been witnessed from Uttarakhand. The technical knowledge is not there for research and development and better production. Encroachment has been another major concern that has been seen in most of the regions in Uttarakhand, and shortage of fuel for tea processing is another important concerns where Uttarakhand is now moving towards bioethanol as one of the major fuels to be used. Transport facility needs to be developed. Now farmers have been talking about cattle manure being used, and this cattle manure has high amount of potassium. This high amount of potassium is indeed important for the production of tea cultivation in Uttarakhand. But along with potassium, there is another important thing which is acid humus which is present, and this acid humus helps in absorption of moisture. So all kind of moisture in the soil gets absorbed because of the acid humus, and therefore the crop yield becomes better. The shape of the microbial composition also helps, and there is another important criteria that we need to understand is the level of minerals being present in the soil, which can be enhanced by use of cattle manure. So cattle manure with high amount of potassium and acid humus becomes an important constituent for the tea estates, and Arcadia is one of the major tea estates in the region of Dehradun which has been significantly increasing the production as of recent. The next is COVID, as always, and the related global issues. Now, with this pandemic, we have seen that the world economy is expected to shrink by 6% of the GDP in 2020 itself. So this is just a projected figure. The final figures could be much worse off. India is estimated to add nearly 8 to 10 million people or new poor, which would be below poverty line, and worldwide it is estimated that nearly 70 million people would go poorer, or would be the new poor as it could be classified as. Also, we have seen that there has been decline in the carbon consumption because of the reduced fuel consumption, and over the next 3 years there could be a significant proportion cut off in the carbon dioxide emissions globally, and this could however add to the economic growth. So there has been one important drastic changes that has been seen here. The next is another important index, which is Climate Change Performance Index 2020. Now this is released by a non-profit climate action network of the Climate Action Network, German Watch, and another is the New Climate Institute. So three of those, the New Climate Institute, General Watch, and the Climate Action Network together have released the index, which is Climate Change Performance Index, and this has been rating the top 3 countries, and the ratings have released that among the G20 nations, you have the biggest greenhouse gas emitters, and these greenhouse gas emitters, among those, only India and UK are the countries which are high performing. All the other countries have been performing average, and there are 8 nations which have been performing far below. Germany and France are trying to integrate the climate change mitigation into the pandemic recovery strategies, and Germany has provided a significant amount of nearly $2 billion fund for the same purpose. Also, China is one of the biggest greenhouse gas emitters of the world, which emits nearly 28% of the total emissions, and it says that by 2060 it aims to become carbon neutral. So, those are some of the important efforts that have been seen. The next most interesting topic for today is facial recognition. Now, this is a technique where using mathematical representation, identifying a person has been used. So there are 3 stages. The first stage is we use the autofocus of the camera to detect a person. In the second stage, the signatures are being seen. Now these could be spacing between eyes, spacing between eyes and mouth. Then you could have dimensions of the nose and distance from the ear, or jawline. So those are some of the characteristics that could be used. And in the third stage, we compare the facial features with the database image that we have. So this is the idea that has been part of the facial recognition. Now, why this has been important recently? In the recent Delhi riots that were witnessed in 2020, the idea was that through the database, using facial recognition technique, we would identify the rioters. However, in 2019, when the High Court gave a judgment, it said that only 2% of the accuracy is seen with facial recognition. So there have been debates that when in 2019 only 2% of it was seen, how it drastically changed to taking a decision to exactly who is a rioter. Again, in 2019, it was seen that this technique is unable to identify a boy or a girl. So definitely a lot of development is yet on the path of facial recognition. Indeed, it has been widely used in many of the countries. India is trying to integrate a national automated facial recognition system, and this would have a visual database of missing people, unidentified people, terrorists, arrested foreigners, and many more suspected people that would be there. Also, this database would be accessible to all the police members through mobile phone. Also, the Home Ministry and the NCRB would be having access to this visual database, and this would help bring in better development. But again, there have been issues with the IT Act 2000 that has been released, which classifies biometrics as a type of data which is having sensitive personal information, and there has to be rules for the collection and disclosure of such information. And this act covers only body corporates. It does not apply to the government use of biometric data. So again, there have been loopholes with the IT Act 2000 where facial recognition technology has been taken into account. Delhi government has been constantly increasing the surveillance. From 2.5 lakh to nearly 5.5 lakh CCTVs have been installed across Delhi, and the idea is to ensure better safety for child and women. The next is the methods through which the search protocol takes place. So there are 3 common methods that are there. It is one-to-one, one-to-n, and end-to-end search. One-to-one search basically says that user can check the credentials of specific information, if specific individual, with the information that is given in the database. One-to-n says the individual would be searched across the entire database, and end-to-n says we identify multiple people from a protest or a similar site and then try to recognize those people. Recently, there was a case in Detroit in US where a person was arrested. He was misidentified as a robber using the facial recognition technique, and he was in custody for 30 hours or more, and later on he was released on an apology note. So the idea is the technology needs to be still developed to its fullest. We are not in its fullest development with the technology before we can apply it. Many of the companies performing this or using this technology have stopped their projects. IBM has closed the facial recognition technology division. Similarly, Amazon has given a 1 year moratorium on the technology. Microsoft has said that it would not sell the facial recognition technology to the police unless and until you have federal legislations that have been passed in US. So those have been some of the major breakthroughs. So far, only two of the cooperations, one is the Japan-based NCE cooperation and the other is US-based Clearview, have been a regular vendor for police departments for having the business with facial recognition technology. So this is again something that is very, very important for you to note and remember. Now, if we look on to the developments in 1960s, you had a bishop and the idea was to manually input a person's facial feature, and this bishop who was Bedso basically introduced the person's features manually into the computer and searched for the matches. So that was the latest or the start of the technology in 1960s. In 1970s, you had facial markers that started, which were thickness of the lips, the thickness of the eyeballs, and so on and so forth. In 1980s and 1990s, new methods were introduced, and those basically talked about extraction of the images from the faces, and this was the step to make this facial recognition technology fully automated. And in 2010, there was a deep neural network study which brought about a mastery in facial recognition, and since 2011, this technology has been used to sight down or to locate the terrorists. So Osama bin Laden was killed by a US raid using this technology. Later on, Facebook, Instagram and companies like those rolled out this technology for photo tagging. So it is a kind of technology which is being used for companies for photo tagging as of now. So facial recognition, a very, very important concept, a very probable question for your examination. One-to-one, one-to-n and end-to-end search, what it is and how the evolution has taken place, the two major vendors as of now. Coming on to the changes in the agriculture. So 3 bills have been recently passed: the Essential Commodity Bill, the Farmer Agreement of Price Assurance, and the Trade and Commerce Bill for 2020 for farmers' produce. So all these three have brought about important development in the agricultural field. However, recently when the procurement was there, which is originally supposed to be on 1st October, has been shifted prior to 26th September, and it was seen that most of the paddy was not procured under MSP. The reason cited was that the content of moisture is 22%. However, we require lesser content. With the government intervention and lot of debates on it, the moisture content permissible limits were increased to 19%. However, a lot of people who had 22% as the moisture content with the paddy crop were not able to sell their paddy crops. The next important development in the same line that we have seen is an online system, and this online system says Meri Fasal Mera Byora, which is my harvest, my detail scheme, and this seeks registration of the farmers and issuance of e-passes to mandis in order to have a hassle-free transaction for the farmers. So this online system, which is Meri Fasal Mera Byora, is again very, very important, and government is also taking steps and measures to ensure that transparency is being set at all levels. Government has also said that only 70% of the gunny bags would be distributed by the government. The rest 30% has to be procured by the farmer himself. And there have been numerous reasons where APMC mandis were introduced in India in the period of 1950s and 60s due to food security issues. However, later on states like Manipur, Kerala, Bihar slowly and gradually moved out of it. Kerala has one of its own systems where the procurement is seen in the open markets, and spices and plantations are the main crop, and it has been doing exceptionally good. Bihar repealed the APMC Act in 2006, stating that it would invite private investments into agriculture. However, much of it went in vain. So there have been models where we have seen APMC being reduced with good results in Kerala, and APMC being removed with exceptionally poor results in the states like Bihar. So what would be the future of agriculture is something to be witnessed, and it's very, very important that accurate steps have been taken. However, as far as MSP is concerned, you have 23 crops which are now part of MSP, and if we focus on the total sale that is going to MSP, 27% of the paddy goes to MSP, 2% of bajra, 8% of maize, 32% potato, 6% soybean, 12% cotton, and 1% of the pulses are being sold through MSP. So if we focus on to the proportion of the crops that is being sold through MSP, that proportion is not even 50% for all of the crops, we could say. So what we need to understand is, first of all, the TOT, the terms of trade that are there for the farmers, the ratio between the prices incurred by the farmers for the input and the prices they receive for the output. So if the benchmark is 100 and the TOT is less than 100, the farmer will not receive a good or a decent price against the crop that he is growing. The farmer is growing. So therefore, terms of trade or TOT becomes important. Also, there have been questions that if APMCs are removed, will there be new brokers that would emerge, and what would be the scenario for the new developments that would be witnessed. The next interesting story that we would understand is the presence of lakes beneath the glaciers in Mars. So in the regions of Ultimis Cupulae, 3 water bodies have been seen underneath the icy glacier, where you have extraterrestrial life on Mars that could be seen. These findings have been revealed by MARSIS, which is the Mars Advanced Radar for Subsurface and Ionosphere Sounding, being launched by European Space Agency in 2013. The evidence has shown that there has been a 19-kilometer single salt body in 2018, and later on 29 such observations were made to make stronger observations for the presence of the lakes beneath the glacier in the region of Mars. In situ seismic studies which deployed the landers, rovers have been used, along with orbital radar data which would be used to understand this phenomena. The next important aspect that we would understand is milk production. Now, milk production, if we focus on, recently there was a statement where the plant driven produce would not be given the name of milk. So soy milk would not be called as milk, was one of the statements that have been released as of recent. If we talk about the historical development in milk, you have Kitab al-Tabik, which was an Arabian cookbook from Baghdad, which mentioned sweet almond milk as one of the ingredients. In 1930s, the Forme of Curry, which is a collection of 200 English recipes, talked about almond milk. Similarly, if we focus on plant-based milk, now not being called as milk, is obtained from 5 different sections. Cereal based is through oat, rice and corn. Legume based from soy, peanut and cowpea. Nut based from almond, coconut, cashew nut. Seed based from sesame, flaxseed and sunflower. And pseudo cereals from quinoa, teff and amaranth. However, if we look onto the Oxford Dictionary, it simply says that anything which is white in color and is a juice is called as milk, and it could be an extract from the plant as well. US FDA in 2018 said that dairy products would be termed as milk, and this would remove soy, almond and oat beverages from the category of milk, and that was to make sure that the plant-based milks are called as drinks, as in most of the European countries or European Union. So rather than being calling those as milk, these should be called as drink. The products must be labeled under dairy free, and a signature of vegan product must be mentioned. So that is again one of the important landmarks that has been done with this draft regulation that has been passed by FSSAI in India, which says no longer the word milk would be used on the labels of the plant produced milk. The plant produced concept. Okay, the next is WTO projection, where, as we said, a huge number of population would fall below poverty line, and there have been three important issues that have been discussed, which are issues regarding negotiation, dispute resolution, and monitoring compliance. Also, World Health Organization has been pooling for numerous initiatives for bringing in health technologies and how accurately this could be brought to fight. So those were some of the best or the most important developments that we have seen under Down to Earth. Over the years, we have seen the weightage for the edition of Down to Earth has significantly increased with your prelims examination. You have at least 5 to 10 questions every year which are directly being asked from these sections. So we would be covering those every fortnightly. If you want to go through a quick summary, we have it here. If you want to if you have time, I would definitely recommend that go through the complete edition. It's very, very important, and it helps you bring in a critical insight even for your mains answer writing. We would be bringing in many more interesting topics for you. Stay subscribed. Have a wonderful day.